Hi, everyone. I'm Tigress Osborne. I am NAAFA's Director of Community Outreach. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, NAAFA is the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance. Thank you for joining us for our most recent installment of the NAAFA webinar series. And I am joined today with Chaya Milchtein. Did I get it?
Very good.
Yay! The Mechanic Shop Femme, and I'm going to tell you about Chaya in just a second. I'm going to first give you a little bit of info about NAAFA for those of you who are joining us for the first time. NAAFA is a 51-year-old fat rights organization that has been fighting for the rights of fat people, particularly focused in the United States, to create fat visibility, to create fat community, and to create protection and positive community and education around creating better lives and more freedom for fat people all over the world. We are focused in the United States. We are located in the United States. Our history has been in the United States, but we are interested in doing that all in as many ways as we can and as many places as we can. The webinar series is one of our educational programs. It is free and open to the public, and part of the way that we are able to do that is through the generous contributions of our members and other supporters. And if you would like to support this program, you are welcome to visit our website and contribute today to support this and many of our other programs. Our website is NAAFA.org, and we've just gone through a website overhaul and introduced a fabulous new look, and we're creating lots of new content. So even if you've been there before, please do check out our new NAAFA website at NAAFA.org. And we also have several other webinars in the works. We do have a webinar coming up with Big Moves Bay Area, which is the world-renowned dance troupe featuring fat dancers that celebrates their 20th anniversary in November. They'll be joining us in September. We're still solidifying that date. And then we're also super excited to be able to tell you that we will be featuring Dr. Joy Cox, whose new book is coming out in October, also this fall, and still solidifying that date, and working on several other webinars coming up soon. So you can always find that information on our website. You can also find it in our newsletter, which you can sign up for at that previously mentioned website. So once again, NAAFA.org. NAAFA.org is your friend. If you are watching this video, if you're joining us live today, we are so happy to have you with us now. If you're watching this video later on our website or on YouTube, you can find links to anything that we mentioned today in the caption. If you're watching us live, we'll put those links in the chat box for you now. We'll also take question and answer in the chat box. If you're watching it later, you can always contact us through the NAAFA website if you have questions or comments or follow-up. With no further ado, I want to introduce you to today's speaker. I'm super excited to be, for the first time, in dialogue with Chaya Milchtein, the Mechanic Shop Femme. We have been connected with each other for quite some time on social media, but this is our first time getting face-to-face, or as face-to-face as we can during these pandemic times and into different parts of the country. So yay, Chaya! Chaya is an automotive educator, writer, and speaker, and the founder of Mechanic Shop Femme. Her work has appeared or been featured in publications ranging from the Chicago Tribune to Shondaland. With 7 years in the auto industry under her belt and 3 years of virtual courses, you'll find her engaging personality. She is an engaging personality who will bring her whole self to her work, and you can find her online at her website, MechanicShopFemme.com. You can also find her on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We also are happy to, we're going to tell you lots about what Chaya is up to now and about a very special event that Chaya has coming up. And if you would like to support that and you're with us live today, we've also asked Chaya to include information about how you can support her directly in the chat box as well. So, but we'll get to that a little bit later. With no further ado, here's Chaya. Hi, Chaya, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Same, I've had a whole lot of respect for you and never really crossed paths, so. It's good
So
to
what
know
we're
the
going to
same
do
place.
Yes. So what we're going to do today is this is going to be a little bit more informal than some of our other webinars, because we're going to do this a little bit like sort of podcast or coffee chat style, and we're going to cover some automotive stuff, we're going to cover some fat visibility stuff, and then we're going to cover some stuff about Chaya's upcoming nuptials and how that relates to fat visibility and queer visibility and some of the other things that have been part of Chaya's public and private life, and sort of just her story. So let's start with the thing that many people know you best for, your life in the world of automotive. Tell us like who are you, for people who don't know, outside of that little bio they just heard from you? Who are you, where are you from, and how did you end up being an automotive educator?
So it's interesting. I get this question a lot, because everybody's like, how is this girl in the automotive world, and why should I learn from her, and why should I trust what she has to say about anything? And I find it interesting because nobody really asks men how did they start in their career. They just assume that somehow it happened. But I actually have a unique, interesting way how I got into the automotive field. I was aging out of the foster care system, and I was desperately looking for a job. I had been involved in the political world for a year or two, and I had done door knocking and Get Out the Vote for Fair Wisconsin, and which was like an LGBT advocacy organization. I had run a small organization connecting gay straight alliances, but basically I was I had too much on my resume to get a job at McDonald's, which was frustrating to me because I was aging out of foster care and I didn't have a job, and we all know that Democratic politics did not pay anything. So I was like, what am I going to do? I started a GoFundMe, which at the time was a little bit less common than it is now. This was like 7 or 8 years ago. And I said, hey guys, like, I really need help. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to pay rent when I turn 18. I can't find a job to save my life. And somebody reached out to me. They sent me an email and they said, she works for the federal government. She's already done a background check on me. She knows who I am. She knows that I'm legit. And she said, money isn't going to help you. How can I actually help you? And I'm like, well, I need a job. Like, if I have a job, I don't have to worry about all this stuff. And she helped me get a job at Sears. And I ended up in the auto center there. And I liked it. Surprisingly enough, I was like, when I started, I didn't even have a driver's license. When they interviewed me and they asked me which department I wanted to work in, I was like, whichever one makes the most money. Like, I don't know. I didn't expect to end up in retail. And they said, well, appliances or automotive. And I was like, automotive sounds more interesting. So they're like, well, do you have a driver's license? And I'm like, nope. So I went, and I think in 3 to 4 weeks, I went from never having driven a car to getting a driver's license and driving around, and then eventually I started at the auto center, and then promptly bought a car, which, wasn't in my books either. So that's how I started. But instead of sort of taking the laid back approach that a lot of service advisors would take, as in, oh, this is just a job for now, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to move on to the next thing. I like to be fully present in the thing that I do. I really want to understand what I'm getting into. So I took the time to learn as much information as I possibly could about this job that I was doing. And then I transferred to New York 3 months later. And in New York, it's like taking everything in Wisconsin and putting it like 100-fold. And now you're in this space where you're bombarded with all of this information and all these people from all different countries and backgrounds and spaces, and all in one place. And I could not have found a better place to learn and to become and to grow into who I was going to be. So,
and you transferred to a Sears Automotive Center in New York City?
Yep, in Brooklyn. So it was very exciting. It was probably one of my favorite places to work in all the different places I worked. So,
so how did you get from Sears Automotive Center service, I'm sorry, what was it?
Service advisor.
Service advisor, yes, I know that term. Service advisor, to having your own website and doing virtual classes and teaching people all over the world things about cars.
So, like I said, I don't do anything half-assed. So, as soon as I realized...
I use my whole ass.
Exactly. As soon as I realized I liked this, I was like, okay, and now I need to learn more, and I need to know more, and I need to ask questions. And I think the way I approach my job was I was the translator. Here's the mechanic and here's the customer. And I'm the person in between who's going to understand the information and translate it to the customer. And what that meant is I had to understand what I was doing. If I didn't understand the information I was getting, I couldn't give back that information in an accurate and complete way. So I would ask questions and I would annoy the heck out of everybody because I would ask and I would go back there and I would look and I would learn to really get it. And I, as a salesperson, this served me well in the job, but as a person, it also served me well in the education role because my customers were happy with the work that they got. One of the biggest things in the automotive industry that people say is that, oh, I did $1,000 worth of work and I didn't need any of it. Well, that's not accurate. Somebody didn't do their job and didn't explain to you why you needed this. You have to get a sense of value for what you're getting. You have to understand what the point is. And anybody who's going to go anywhere where they don't get the point is also, it's the same with hospital bills. And hospital bills are outrageous, but that's another story. So all this education, and I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was good at working and at creating things and building. I started a car service for queer people in New York. I worked for a podiatrist. I worked at farmers markets, all in addition to my full-time job in automotive. So I always had like this drive to do more and be more and get somewhere. And eventually I was like, listen, I need to make more money in a way that's more sustainable and not working $10 an hour at the farmer's market and then going into Macy's and buying an eyeliner that costs $90, not $90, $40. It had to be more sustainable. Like that wasn't practical. So I started working with a coach and she recommended that I start a blog, and I sort of looked at her and was like, I don't think so. I don't really know how to write. I have some terrible spelling. I was raised in a Hasidic Jewish home, and I missed a lot of my general education that most Americans rely on when they do their jobs. So I was like, I don't think so. She's like, people want to read what you have to say. Just write it down. You could do a couple blog posts, and if they hate it, then you don't have to do it. Well, turns out people liked it. So I did the blog posts, and then I was like, okay, what's the next step? And then I started the Instagram, and people really liked that. And I was like, okay, still don't understand how this is going to turn into something practical. Like right now, I'm just doing a ton of work that's not turning into anything. Mm-hmm. And I posted in this group on Facebook, which doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. And I said, hey, y'all, here's what I do. I don't know what I should do next. Like, do you have any ideas? Like, what do people want to know? And they're like, you should do classes. And I was like, I'm not a teacher. Not a writer. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a car person. No. So the next time I shared my blog post, it was about oil changes. I put at the bottom of the caption, and I wrote, I'm thinking about teaching a class on how to buy a used car. If you're interested, I don't even know if I'm doing this yet, but if you're interested, send me a message. Well, I have a lot of messages. So that started, and then it sort of all sort of snowballed. I'm here to serve the community and serve the people. And while at the end of the day, it is a business and I have to support myself and my family and things like that, if I can do it in a way that is equitable to everybody and where I can help people who have more money and I can help people who have less money and I can use what I know and create something amazing, that's the goal.
And Kaya, am I correct in saying that I've heard you say before that that class on how to buy a used car is actually one of the most popular services that you offer, that people really, that's one of your fan favorites?
Yes. It is every single time. It's very popular. A lot of people who take that class go on to take every other class that I offer. Because I'm very passionate about teaching that class, mostly because I've seen so many people screwed over by just simple mistakes that if you take a class, all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, I can not make these 20 different little mistakes that are really easy to avoid if you know what to look for. And then here we are.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask you to give away all of your trade secrets for free, but I am going to ask you to give some car tips during this webinar. Sure. Is there one thing from that class that you can share with our audience?
Yes, the number one thing is to never buy a car unless you've taken it to a mechanic to get it checked. Do not put any money. Sometimes you have to put a good faith deposit, but you should be able to get that back if the car is screwed up. But don't buy a car, don't sign any paperwork until you've gotten the car inspected. If you learn nothing else from me, this is the most important possible thing you can do for yourself and for your car. And this has saved people, even just in the last month, 3 people who took my class saved $800 or more because of this.
And does that even go if you're buying a used car from a dealership, or only if you're buying a used car?
From a dealer. Absolutely from a dealer. Anywhere you buy a used car, you should have a mechanic inspect it. There is an exception to this. If you're buying a car from one of those virtual car buying services like Carvana, you do not have a way to have it inspected before you buy it. But what I would say is have it inspected immediately after you buy it, because they give you like a 7-day grace period, depending on which one you go with. And if you have it inspected immediately after, then you can return the car if there's too many problems.
So I want to, we're definitely going to do a few more car tips, and we're going to do some car tips that are specifically oriented to our audience, which is fat people. And for those of you who are listening or watching who are new to NAAFA, we don't do euphemisms, so we're going to be saying fat people. But before we do that, I want to do a little bit more about your experience with automotive world and what that's been like for you. So, why did you choose Auto Shop Femme as the sort of branding of your, when you were moving from being literally in the auto shop to being sort of virtually in the auto shop? Why did you choose Auto Shop Femme?
So I actually only went full-time doing Mechanic Shop Femme in April, and I was working on the business for 3 years simultaneously as working full-time at the shop. But I wanted to bring my whole self to my job and to my business. So being loud and proud about being femme was really important to me. I also wanted to make sure that I didn't misidentify myself. I write mechanic shop instead of just mechanic because I worked at a shop. I managed shops. I worked with the customers, but I don't often work on vehicles, frankly, for purely physical reasons. I have 3 fractures in my back, and it's not a sustainable long-term thing. Can I do things? Yes. Do I understand cars? Yes. Can I explain cars? Absolutely. But can I work on cars every single day? No. So I wanted something that would make it clear that I wasn't a mechanic full-time. And I wanted something that should make it clear that I'm a femme, that I am somebody who is boldly and proudly exactly as I want to be every single day. And some days that means lipstick and some days that means not. I just put on makeup to do this call. I didn't have makeup on all day.
Me too.
So that was the importance of it. I really just sat in front of the computer and wrote a couple things down. I was like, oh, okay, this one fits. But I never thought it would take off in the way it did, and then it did, and it still fits. So
and I actually misnamed your brand, which is not Auto Shop Femme. It is Mechanic Shop Femme. Yes. My intention was to emphasize the femme, but I said it wrong. So I apologize for that.
Okay.
but in that emphasis on femme, what is it like to be the femme in the mechanic shop, in the auto shop? I think a lot of us are fully aware. I think it's safe to say most of us are fully aware that the stereotype of what it looks like inside the mechanic shop is that the place of women is outside at the customer counter or on the wall in the pinup calendar. Now you tell me, is that a fair stereotype? Is that accurate to what mechanic shops look like these days? Or is that an outdated stereotype?
It's pretty accurate. There are women mechanics, and there are women service advisors, and there are women service managers. There's still very few of them. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, it's like 8 or 9% of the automotive repair industry is women. Total, including, you have to remember, this is including support staff like accountants and secretaries and receptionists and all of the things. So I think it's like 8 or 9% at the last census. So that's 10-year-old data. But frankly, based on our experiences of women who are in the similar positions to me, I don't think we've seen it dramatically increase in the last 10 years. But it's interesting. I've had a lot of very weird experiences. When I worked at Sears, I wore skirts to work, and people would comment on that. My bosses would comment on that sometimes. After the first time, I'd be like, so the handbook says this, so I expect this should be the last time you're going to talk to me about this. Mm-hmm. Like, but Chaya, it's not practical. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I have really big thighs. I promise you, you cannot see anything between them. It is not possible. Anyhow, so it's an interesting dynamic. There's a little bit of the lesbian stereotype thing that goes on where they're like, oh, okay, we'll just treat you like a dude because you love women, and so it'll be fine. But then I'm like, I don't really want to talk to you about like sexual stuff. Like, still doesn't quite fit, and I don't want to see your pinup calendars. I wrote about this for, now the publication escaped me, but I wrote about sexism in the automotive industry, and there's quite a bit of it. And I try to just like keep my head down, more like keep my brain down, but keep my head up and sort of barrel my way through places and be like, well, you got a problem with me, that's your problem, not mine. And I can explain to you all the ways you're wrong, or you can just move out of my way because this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. And then sort of just keep my brain and ears shut to not listen to what they have to say, because I have a destination and I have a goal and I have a purpose, and here's my vision, and that's all that matters, not all the noise around me that's going on. And eventually people, it could be seen as aggressive and it could be seen as a lot of things, but eventually most people come around and realize that this is just who I am, and I'm going to do it really well, and you're going to either be with me or you're not going to be with me. And I'm not really going to care either way.
And it's worked?
It's worked. I mean, for better or for worse. Sometimes you get tired of the friction. And, I have to be honest, like, as much as I barrel through places, sometimes I'm like, oh boy, I'm tired. Tired of fighting. But then I just move on to the next place. And I think that there's a misconception, or maybe there's like bad connotations with moving your way up through an industry by moving around. And I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong for women and queer folks as a general rule. We now live in a society where a lot of times we are capped at our potential at a specific place. So I can only get so far at this one business. And I can only get promoted so high because either I'm too good at my job, or the people who make those decisions aren't going to promote somebody like me, or I'm too much of a loudmouth, or whatever else you want to say. But sometimes you just need to move on to the next place to move up the ladder. And that's what I've done. It's worked really well for me so far. But I wonder what my life would look like if I literally kept my head down and was quiet and, did the job that I was told to do without saying things. I don't think I would get anywhere near where I am now. they'd be like, oh, you're 25, you're still working as a service advisor, and, you know, maybe in 5 years you'd get somewhere. But I was an area manager for Sears at 19. I was a service manager by the time I was 20. I was managing men who were 3 times my age because I knew what I was doing, because I kept my head up, because I didn't let those things affect me, at least outwardly, in the space I was in.
Well, let's talk about what it's like to be a loudmouth online, because that is another one of the spaces where you are no wilting flower when it comes to people trying to tell you what to do. What is it like to be an outspoken and unapologetic presence on social media? Why is that important to you?
So the way I like to look at it is, I'm not the person that's going to go into spaces that don't want me online and try to talk my way through them. So there are some people like that will go into spaces and that will go fight with people. I don't. I keep to my corner of the internet, and I come out exactly as I am. And if you want to be in my corner of the internet, then you already know what I'm about. Now, if you're going to come to my space and, excuse me, you're going to fuck with me, then it becomes your problem. Like, you come to me, you join me. I'm not coming out to fight with you in your corner. So sometimes what happens is people come to you and they say all kinds of crap about being a woman in the automotive field, but also about being fat in general. I was honored to be one of the Advocates 2020 Women of the Year, which was amazing. And I had no idea the amount of immense hate I would get from people that I thought of as my own community. Just destroyed me online. And don't get me wrong, this article said nothing about me being fat. Like, it had nothing to do with my size. And people just demolished me, like 600 nasty comments. I was like, wow. So there are different ways to do things. And there's no correct way to respond to trolls. And I come at this from a marketing perspective. So keep that in mind. I have my business cap on when these things happen, as opposed to my, oh my God, the whole world is trying to demolish me type of cap, which drives my fiance crazy. She's like, Chaya, you're still up responding to comments. I'm like, so I look at it as, this is an opportunity to, the more attention you get, no matter who you get it from, the higher your platform is going to be elevated. People, there's a reason people are hating on you. They don't just go attack some random person on the internet that has no clout or no platform. They attack somebody who has some sort of impact. So I usually ask my community and my people to be like, hey, this is happening here. Can y'all come help me? And this helps in 2 ways. One, it helps increase the popularity of whatever the article is or whatever happened that's causing this problem. It also feels good. I mean, when you're, as much as I try to shield myself off and put up the walls, I mean, when people are like, especially the advocate, like when some random Trump troll attacks me on the Twitter, I'm just like, okay, whatever, you're a loser. But when like queer people, and I should say not queer people, when gay people on the internet, specifically gay men, attack me for being fat, I was like, what's your problem? So that's one way of doing it. When the Trump troll attacked me on Twitter, which happens sometimes, I write for a publication called The Inventory. It is a publication by it's a publication by like the same place that does The Onion, and the same place that does Jezebel, and the same place that does Jalopnik, which is an automotive site. So I write a bi-weekly column for The Inventory about cars. It's called Mechanic Shop Femme, like me. And they get reshared on Jalopnik because it's the same platform. So they republish them there. So, and I often get like really awful comments from men on Jalopnik on my articles. So I assume that this Trump person came from that world. And they like started saying all kinds of crap and other people jumped on. And somebody suggested that instead of me like telling people to come and talk, I should say for every retweet and for every comment, I'm going to donate a certain percentage or a certain dollar amount to an organization that supports whatever cause they are attacking. So I donated 10 cents for every retweet and every comment to Lift Garage, which is owned by a woman, and it's a nonprofit auto repair shop in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And it was perfect. It turned the situation that was kind of a little miserable into this really empowering opportunity to give money, and it wasn't a ton of money. It ended up being like $50, but it still turned this into a really unique opportunity. Where would you say you get attacked most? Size, queerness, not queerness, size and female in a male-dominated industry.
Okay, I'm gonna, so normally what we do, we usually keep the questions till the end, but since you read that out, I'm gonna repeat it because other people who are watching this later won't know what just happened. No, that's okay. I just want to make sure it's clear for people who are watching this later. So there was a question in the chat that Chaya could see, and what that question was, the question read, where would you say you get attacked most? Size, queerness, being a woman in the industry? That's what it said, right? Yeah. Sorry, I just closed it. And so Chaya was just thinking through the answer to that question. So now, I'm sorry, go ahead and answer it again.
So I would say size. It depends on who is attacking you. If it's some bottom feeders, they want to talk about your size because that's, it's easy pickings. When I talk about myself, when I talk about Mechanic Shop Femme, when I talk about cars, I do it with myself. I am my marketing. I post pictures of myself with the cars and things like that. So people tend to attack the size. And they also attack the fact that if I was a man of size standing in front of the car, I wouldn't get the same response. So.
Yeah, we've all seen a fat guy who's a mechanic. We've all seen that.
Exactly. And it's no big deal.
Maybe not in booty shorts, but.
Okay, maybe not. I give you that.
One of the reasons, Chaya, that I love seeing people take on their trolls is because I actually think, I do think you're right that a lot of trolls are attacking prominent people because they love the attention. But there is also a type of troll that actually does attack people who are not prominent. They just look at fat hashtags or whatever, and they attack people who aren't prominent at all.
Oh, yeah.
And when those people get attacked, it means so much to them to have seen more prominent people fight back, to have seen people who are deeper into their activism and have been, have more vocabulary around how to articulate the fight or to, to say something other than stop being mean to me, but to actually sort of it's great to be able to just say F you, bully, I don't have to take this crap from you. But it's also great to be able to have, to be able to sort of break down more of an argument about why I don't have to take this crap from you. Or, especially when people position themselves as really doing it for your sake, to be able to have those people who can really make that, outline the reasons why you can't even try to pull the wool over other people's eyes that you're doing this for my sake and here's why.
Right.
When other people like you, I love to see people like Sonia Renee Taylor break down for somebody why don't even try it, dude. And
I could tell you, I don't respond to Instagram. Nasty Instagram comments, I just delete them.
Yeah.
So I also believe in taking care of yourself. So if you're a person and you're watching this webinar and you have somebody come onto your Instagram and say some nonsense, what I would do in that situation is just delete the comment to take care of yourself. unless you wish to break down those conversations with them. But usually those people, it doesn't matter what you're going to say, they're not going to understand. On Facebook, however, I usually do it differently. So I posted about my wedding in a group, a New York City group, and somebody said we should both go on a diet. And I just responded to them in a way that makes them feel bad about themselves instead of the other way around. I said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just, I guess I'm proving that fat people can be in love too, I mean, what can I say? And they were like, you missed the point, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm sorry, do I not deserve respect because I'm not healthy? Like, I was like, and she had pictures of her kids in her profile picture. So I said, do you wish to show your kids how to be a bully on the internet just because you think my size is too big? Like, we're not talking about health here. Do you wish to publicly humiliate me because I'm fat a few days before the biggest day of my life? Is that so important to you? How does that make you feel? Like, what makes you feel like? And eventually she deleted the thread because I went back to screenshot because I really liked what I said and I forgot. So she deleted the whole thread because I think at that point she realized that she's being a bully. And I don't think people like her, not on Instagram, but people like her, she didn't realize she was being a bully. She didn't realize that she was just saying, oh, it's a pandemic, you should lose weight because fat people are going to die. And I was like, no, you're not taking care of me. You're taking care of yourself and your feelings around this pandemic. So let me explain to you how this is harmful to me. And let me watch you go back into your little cave and go away.
Yeah, also, my wedding is a couple days away, so how would this even, okay. Yeah, I can't even
Exactly.
get
Like, what do you think I'm gonna lose? I'm gonna lose, how much weight you think I need to lose? 100 pounds, 150 pounds in the next 3 days? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's, it defies logic sometimes, all the things that they say. One of my favorite things about trolls, and then we'll go on to some other things. One of my favorite things about trolls is when they tell me that I'm going to die by the time I'm 30 because I'm 45. And so I always delight in that. Let's talk about your wedding. We'll do some car stuff before we wrap up, but let's talk about your wedding since you just brought that up. Tell me why you decided to invite the whole world to your wedding.
Oh, I'm fat and queer and, all the things. Well, let's put it this way. I love community, and I believe building community around. Let me back up. So my whole adult life, I've invited people to my house for potlucks, for holiday dinners like Passover and Hanukkah and Christmas and Thanksgiving and all the things, and just opened my house up to truly random strangers, mostly queer people from the internet, and said, hey, come over. Let's eat together. Let's build something. And then, my partner is part of it, and we do this stuff, and it's beautiful. And it's lovely. When we got engaged, we struggled. Neither of our sets of our parents were coming to our wedding, so it was sort of like, what do we do? So she wanted to go to Vegas. I was like, that's not even on the table. So let's think of other compromises. And she said. And I was like, well, maybe we just have a big queer party in New York City. Like, we'll find somebody who has a big apartment, so we'll just invite a bunch of people, and it will be lovely. And she's like, okay, I think I could get down with that. And then COVID. So we're sort of thinking through our options. Do we wait? Do we not? And frankly, as queer, unmarried people that have been together for almost 5 years, we've been living together for almost 5 years. So it's kind of like, do you step back and say, okay, if I get sick, I'm going to put my fate of my life into the hands of my parents who haven't talked to me in 8 years, because my partner is not going to be able to make those health decisions for me, and vice versa. Like, do we wait or do we just go ahead and do something? So I started making the feelers out there, and I was like, oh, I'll just live stream from my phone to a couple people who want to watch. And it sort of just grew.
and
bigger
grew and
around
grew.
then. And I was like, you know what? We'll invite everybody. It'll be a blast. How many times do you see queer, fat, interfaith people get married? Even on TV, you never see that.
Yeah, how many times does my big fat wedding actually mean fat people in a media sense? Right? Like in a media sense, we know fat people have beautiful weddings all the time.
Right.
But in a media sense, when does my big fat wedding actually mean fat people?
Never.
That's not a weight loss story. That's not, we get all these media stories that are like the story of how like this fat couple who's going to try to lose weight together before their wedding or something like that.
Right.
And
I'm like, gross.
Thank you for giving us one that's not that.
Like, how do we make it a beautiful, intimate event while still making it a big queer party? So this was the great compromise, and it really grew. It went from being on my cell phone to now like I have a team of videographers that are going to come and live stream it because I want to be present at my wedding and not dealing with the cell phone and nobody being able to hear me. Like it went from a very small thing to very big very quickly. We only decided we were going to get married on the 29th like 4 weeks ago. So yeah.
So it's on the 29th of August.
Yes.
And for folks who are seeing this before then, how can they join you? Because it is open to the public.
Yes. If you go onto MechanicShopFemme.com, If you go onto Facebook, Mechanic Shop Femme, it's in the events on the Facebook page. You can also search in Facebook, you're invited to the biggest, queerest wedding of the year. I think it's called. It's been published on the Curvy Fashionista, so you can go read about our engagement there. And it will be published in the Forward, Equally Wed, and Hey Alma in the next 3 days. So you can find the links there too. And come join us. It's going to be fun. I'm not going to see you because I'm going to pretend the trolls don't exist for the wedding, and I'm not going to watch the live feed. So everybody can watch us, but we are not going to watch it.
So you'll just be feeling the love coming at you, but you won't be actually looking at it.
Yeah, and I think there's like 8,500 people coming right now. So.
And
yes.
What was it like? Yes. What was it like for you? You mentioned to me when we were talking about doing this webinar that you wanted to say a few words about plus size wedding fashion.
Oh boy. So I wear like a 22, 24 in real life clothing. And I am wearing the top size available in David's Bridal, which is the only bridal shop in the area that I can go to and buy a dress for the wedding I planned in 5 weeks, which was very unfortunate because I'm grateful that I received this enormous platform for our wedding. And and every other part of the wedding is by little artists and creators and small businesses and people of color. And then we have the bridal gowns where I can't get another dress in 5 weeks outside of David's Bridal. Even on the websites that everybody tells you to go to as a fat person, like, oh, go to Azazi, go to other places, they had a waiting list that was longer than that, which I couldn't get. So I think that when we talk about bridal fashion, we don't see fat people wearing bridal gowns. And that's why it was important to me when I got engaged that I showcased bridal fashion on my website. I did a bridal lookbook with Joynice from Fly and Fluffy on Instagram. She wears a bridal size 40. I wear a bridal size 26 to 30. And we did a lookbook together of dresses, of bridal gowns on our bodies so people could see how fat people look in their dresses in all kinds of designs, which I think was awesome. But even now, like, I'm going through Pinterest and I'm trying to find pictures of 2 fat brides wearing dresses so that I can get ideas for poses. You know how many of those exist? Like,
I would imagine it's only a handful.
Like almost nothing. And I don't know if I'm putting the wrong search terms in, but this should be common. If 67% of people in the US are plus size, then the likelihood of 2 plus size people falling in love with each other is not out of the norm. So where's our inspiration? Where's our, and that's what I want the wedding to be. I want the wedding to be this space where fat brides can look and be like, oh my God, here's somebody like me getting married. I can fall in love. I can wear the dress I want to wear. I can have the event that I want to wear and people to think that I'm beautiful on that day.
Yeah, David's Bridal is one of the worst offenders of being super, how do I want to word this? I'm like, do I want to be diplomatic or not? David's Bridal has a captive audience, and they know they have a captive audience. And because of that, while I am appreciative of the fact that they offer something to brides and bridesmaids that nobody else really offers, which is an in-person place to try things on, at least in person before the pandemic, to try things on in a way that nobody else in this country offers. Because they know they have that, they don't have to do all that much for you. And they also don't have to do anything for you in terms of representation. Yes. And as a bridesmaid, I have not been through this as a bride, but as a bridesmaid, I actually found that quite traumatic. You know, the dresses were lovely. The bridesmaids were lovely. We had a great experience. The wedding that I was in, the bride was having a custom made dress, and she had her whole own other experience about that, which I won't speak to because it wasn't my experience. But as a bridesmaid, even though we ended up with lovely dresses, the experience of shopping those dresses on a website where everyone on the website was probably a size 2 was quite traumatic. Yeah. And they give zero cares about it. So it is unfortunate, and I'm really grateful to see that someone is doing work around that. I know there are many designers, you know, smaller independent designers who are doing work around that, but like they're the conglomerate, you know. And right. I'm super
and like the dresses we ended up with don't look anything like they look on the site. I would never buy these dresses shopping davidsbridal.com ever. They don't look anything like that. And once you put it on, I was like, wow, this is really beautiful. And it is beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I love my dress. However, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't want to end on that note because we're super excited for you about your wedding, and you are super excited about your wedding. I do want to make sure we get some car care stuff in. And folks, if you're with us live and you have any more questions you want to put in the chat, go ahead and do that while Chaya and I do a couple of minutes of car chat. We started a few minutes after the hour, so we're going to go a few more minutes. And I think this is a good time, Chaya, for us to, we talked about a few fat-specific things about cars. I want to know if the idea that fat people are harder on their tires because they weigh more is true or false.
It's not true and not false, really. Here's where people are not quite harder on their car, but are different on their car. So I went to my female mechanics group and I said, hey, y'all, I've been trying to do this research about fat people in their cars for a while and I can't find anything. So like, help me out. What do y'all see? Tell me. And had a really respectful conversation with incredible women who are leading the industry in automotive. And there is one thing that I can tell you for sure. If you are super fat, if you're over like 350 pounds, 400 pounds, and the weight matters in this regard, when you get a wheel alignment, you should get a custom wheel alignment, which means you are physically in the car while they're doing the alignment. And the reason that's important is because the way your weight sits on the wheels is going to shift them. So if you are a fat person, and I know fat people have experienced this, if you are a fat person that you've gotten a wheel alignment and you've been like, oh my God, my car is pulling, my car is not going straight, this is wrong, and you've probably yelled at the shop like 4 or 5 times about it, typically it's not because the alignment was done wrong, it's because the alignment changes once you put your body weight in that car, which is not a bad thing, it's just a thing. So if you know about it in advance, then you can know that you can get a custom alignment. And all that means is that the shop has to let you sit in the car while they adjust the wheels. Because what an alignment does is it makes sure that your wheels are 100% straight to the ground. And it's done by these electronic sensors that are put on each wheel, and then it's adjusted by the millimeter on a screen that tells you if it's green or red. And when you put your weight into the car, for most people, there's some tolerance and some give, depending on your weight and depending on the car you have, not just on your weight, where it won't cause you an issue. But if you have especially a sedan or a coupe or a smaller vehicle, and you are on the larger side and you're having this problem, then you should get a custom wheel alignment. And you may have to talk to your shop about it, because I know in the places I worked, I would never let anybody go up in their car for liability reasons. So it has to be somebody who's willing to work with you. So that would be the number one thing. If you get the alignment custom, there should be no problem with your tires. However, if your car is pulling and the alignment is off and you continue to drive like that, then that will cause tire wear. But that's not really you. That's just because the car isn't adjusted to fit you correctly. So that would be the number one maintenance related item that I would recommend. And I would say that this is less common on larger SUVs and trucks, because they are usually made to carry a heavier load. So think about any car that a large dude would buy. That car probably will have less of this problem. But if you're looking at a smaller sedan, there's more weight in one area, that's something you should think about. The second thing, and this is gonna probably go for folks probably over 400 pounds, and I hate to talk about numbers, like I don't know how much I weigh myself. I haven't weighed myself in years, but here we're talking about technicalities, and some technicalities have to come with some number.
Yeah, we don't talk about numbers in terms of things like people's appearance, but
right.
when it's about things that actually have to do with weight, like this
right.
is why we want to live in a weight neutral world when it comes to social issues, because then when it actually is about the physical world and things that have to do with like physics and weight, then we could
right.
actually be talking about that in a way that's socially neutral.
Exactly.
So that we can get the information.
This is totally neutral.
Right.
So, one thing I've heard, especially from one big influencer, and big, I mean like she has a huge platform, and she's also a super fat. She talks a lot about how her car has a major problem with the seats, and how they've changed the seat a bunch of times and they've had lots of issues with the seat. So if you're over about, depends on the car, 400 or 450 pounds, I would ask that you ask the manufacturer of the car what the weight limit is on the seat. And the reason for that is because the metal that the seat is made out of has a weight limit. And what happens if you're over that weight limit is you can cause the metal to warp. Now, that's not a huge problem, except you're going to damage the seat, and then you're going to have to keep replacing the seat, which is in itself a problem. But the second part of the issue is if you get into a car accident, there's a possibility that the seat isn't going to stay where it needs to stay so that you're safe in your vehicle. So if you're on the larger side of large and you are having any kind of issues with your seat, or you're concerned that you might, if you call the manufacturer of your vehicle, they will be able to tell you what the weight limit on the seat is. And if you are above that weight limit, you have the option of going to like a metal fabrication shop, and they can fabricate the metal, the seat frame for you for that car. It's not a cheap process, unfortunately, but it's safer. It's also something you could do before you buy the car. So I don't know what these numbers are, and I tried to look them up, and there's really no way of knowing because every car is different. But if you know what that number is, you can know, oh, I don't want to buy this car. Or I want to go ahead and have a seat made for me, a seat frame made for me that is made to be able to hold my weight so I don't have these problems. So that's another weight-related thing. But other than that, I mean, cars are made to hold heavy things and heavy people. They are huge metal pieces of machinery, and they don't need any kind of extra support just because you're a larger person. Sometimes weight can have an impact on the suspension that may need to be changed a little bit sooner, but so can things like potholes and just bad driving can also have an impact on the suspension in the same way. So that would be my, like, the two things that I would suggest you do: get a custom alignment and get a seat fabricated if you're having that problem. Like, you know, like this influencer who talks a lot about her Murano and this problem that they're having with the seat that they brought brand new. So those would be my takeaways, I guess.
Okay, I have another size-related car question. This one's not about weight, but for people who are of a size where they need a seatbelt extender for their car, is it really true that I have to buy a specific seatbelt extender for my particular model of car, or is that something that stores just tell me to try to get me to buy a different one for my car than for my mom's car, so I have to buy two?
It is true that you should get a seatbelt extender that's designed for your car. In fact, I would go as far as to say that you should get a seatbelt extender from the manufacturer if they make them. Some manufacturers, I think Toyota and Honda, make seatbelt extenders. And the reason for this is you have to remember, the seatbelt is not just holding you into your seat, but it's also controlling things like your airbags when you're in an accident. This is really crucial. You don't want to get a seatbelt that's improperly fitted and your seatbelt will come out when you're in an accident, or it won't trigger the proper mechanisms to create the airbags to inflate if that's something that's necessary. So one, get the seatbelt extender from the manufacturer if they make one. Two, if they don't, the Department of Transportation actually regulates seatbelt extenders, and they have a certification for it. And there's also a European certification for seatbelt extenders if you can't find one that's DOT certified for your vehicle. And I have this one website that I've heard of a lot. It's called seatbeltextenderpros.com. And they have a whole bunch of different seatbelt extenders. They also have seatbelt extenders for airplanes. And it's not the same thing. You want to have a separate seatbelt extender for your airplane. So if you're driving a car on a regular basis and you're struggling with the seatbelt, or you're not wearing your seatbelt, I would invest in getting a seatbelt extender. And if you're often driving somebody else's car or riding in somebody else's car, I would also consider getting a seatbelt extender for them. And in my experience, the passenger seat on vehicles tends to have a shorter seatbelt than the driver's seat. I don't know why. It's just sort of how it is. My partner is like a size 18, 20, and she locks in her seatbelt in the passenger seat every time she sits in the car. So something to keep in mind, I would get one for those situations. Now, if you're in a situation where you're in an unfamiliar vehicle like an Uber and you are sitting in the back seat and you have your universal seatbelt extender, I would use that as opposed to not using it.
So something is better than nothing.
Yes, especially if you're in the back seat. If you're in the front driver's seat, I would be a little bit more weary about that. And then something is better than nothing is my opinion. I am not an engineer of a car, and I have never done any safety testing around what happens if you're in an accident. But that would be my opinion.
Would it be your opinion that as a good ally practice that I should have a seatbelt extender for my car and my model in my passenger seat for other people that use my car?
I think that would make sense. If you have people using your car on a regular basis, I would definitely do that. Nobody ever drives my car, so I don't have a seatbelt extender, but it's probably a good idea to have one in your vehicle.
I did order a seatbelt extender recently from the website you mentioned, seatbeltextenderpro.com.
Yeah.
And I've only had a chance to test it a couple of times since we're not really going anywhere right now in the world. But so far so good.
And they're not super
I was
expensive,
able to order,
right? How much did yours cost?
it was less than $20, and I'm pretty committed right now to trying not to order things from Amazon whenever possible. So I ordered through them, and they did have make and model specific seat belts available. And so I ordered one for my mom's car, and when I drive her car, I don't need one. When I'm in her passenger seat, I do. So in line with what you said, and so far so good. I'm happy with it. So, and they have various lengths of extenders. So you don't have to get more than what you need if you're trying to be cost conscious. So it's worth it. Off that one experience, I can recommend it personally.
Yeah, so it doesn't cost a lot to be an ally in this regard. You spend $20 to get a seatbelt extender for your vehicle and make things better for you, especially if you're watching this and you're an Uber driver. If you're an Uber driver, you should have a seatbelt extender in your car. And that should be just best business practice.
Okay. Do have one question from the chat, and it is from our NAAFA board chair. Can you recommend a resource website or something else that says? Sorry, where did it go? Sorry.
Are there any websites out there that recommend specific cars for fat people? NAAFA gets these types of questions often. Thank you. Yeah, soon to be my website. I am working on creating something. I'm working really hard on it. It's kind of a huge project. If y'all want to fund me to do it, that would be very lovely. It's a huge project because plus size people are not a monolith, and our bodies are all completely different. And what I fit into, somebody else that technically has the same size as me may not fit into. So I have done a survey of like 250 people who wear over a size 24 to get what vehicle they drive that they love. And then ask them where they their weight, where they carry their weight, and all of these things. And I haven't quite figured out how to boil all that information down into a easily readable document. But as far as I know, there is nothing out there. I will be the first person to have something out there. And after I get married, I can sort of focus on that. I have a couple other things. I'm working on some big projects, but that is one of the things that I want to do before the end of the year.
Are there any particular makes and models that you want to shout out as favorites from your expertise or from your research so far?
So it used to be that Chevy Impalas that have a bench seat, people really like them, but they stopped making those. So if you have a smaller budget and you're getting an older car, flat bench Chevy Impalas are good. Trucks tend to have bigger seats than sedans and coupes. There are still some trucks that they make with bench seats, or they make them with these things that come down and then you can lift it up and then it becomes a bench seat. So you're like F-150s and your Tacomas, but not every big person wants to drive a big car. So the most common car that I hear all the time is a Kia Soul. It's a hugely popular fat car. It's not a hugely popular car for me, but it is one that fits people's bodies the best that I've heard so far. That's one of the top cars.
Is it a square shape?
I'm sorry?
Is the square shape what makes the difference?
I don't know. I don't know if it's a square. I've driven a lot of cars, but I have not driven a Kia Soul. So I wouldn't be able to tell you that. However, also more luxury vehicles like Lexuses tend to have bigger seats for some reason. And then I would also stay away from like sports models. A lot of sports model vehicles have those weird things that go up on the side of the seat that like dig into your hips and your thighs. That makes it pretty uncomfortable for people as well. I drive a 2019 Subaru Impreza, and I'm very comfortable in it. But I also have narrow hips, and I'm a size 26 here and a 22 at the bottom. So inverted triangle. So it depends on who's asking. But a lot of people that I know like Subarus a lot. They're very comfortable to drive.
So we don't have any other questions coming from the chat, Chaya. I always like to end our webinars by asking our presenters, is there anything I didn't ask you about that you wish I had asked you, that you just really would like our audience to know from you? And for you, that can be something about cars, or it can be anything about any of the other topics that we covered with you.
Cars, I don't know. I love what I do, and I love teaching people about cars. And I think that sometimes when people see what I do, they worry that they don't know enough. So if you're interested in taking one of my classes, you really don't need to know anything. I've had people take my classes to prepare to buy a car that have never driven a car, never had a driver's license, and still be able to walk away with a good amount of information. So I dare you to take a little bit of power back for yourself and take the leap and learn a little bit. And it doesn't have to be from me, but just do your research. Don't let anybody tell you that women don't know anything about cars, because women have known more about cars than most of my male customers who come in and think they know about cars and end up getting the wrong services. So you got this.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you with us for the NAAFA webinar series. And thank you to those of you who joined us live today, and to those of you who are watching in our internet audience. Once again, if you would like to follow Chaya online, you can find Chaya on her own website at MechanicShopFemme.com, and you can also find her on most social media under Mechanic Shop Femme, and on Twitter under Mechanic Femme?
Yes, Mechanic Femme on Twitter.
Mechanic Femme on
Twitter. To characters.
Oh, character limit, right. Mechanic Femme on Twitter. We also encourage you, if you were moved by what you learned from Chaya today, if you want to support her, ongoing work, in particular the project that she mentioned, creating this database for information about cars for fat people, you can give to Chaya on CashApp, Venmo, PayPal, or Zelle, as Mechanic Shop, not Zelle. Those other ones, CashApp, Venmo, PayPal, as Mechanic Shop Femme. You can also support the NAAFA webinar program by giving to NAAFA at naafa.org. And once again, thank you, Chaya, for joining us today. Thank you all for being here. And we'll see you for our next installment coming up soon. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.